Great light, my loves, and the love of living Father. This is David, a man of passion and destiny, chapter 6. Every crutch removed. In the last chapter, we saw how angry and suspicious King Saul became when he heard the people singing David's praises and saw how the young hero prospered. Saul could no longer contain himself. The writer H.G. Wells say of one of his strange characters, Mr. Polly, he was not so much a human being as a civil war. I think that is a perfect description of Saul. He became a living civil war, miserable, possessed of an evil spirit, mentally breaking, a suspicious anger, jealous man. As a result, he struck out against the most trusted and trustworthy servant in his camp, David. An evil spirit from God came mightily upon Saul, and he raved in the midst of the house while David was playing the harp with his hand as usual, and a spear was in Saul's hand. And Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. 1 Samuel 18:10 through 11. Stop and picture that volatile scene in your mind. I imagine the mounting pressure. Chances are you've never had anyone threaten your life, let alone hurl a spear in hopes of killing you. But here's David doing what he can to lighten the king's dark spirit. When all of a sudden, whoosh, a sharp, pointed spear flies right past his head. Suddenly, reality strikes. Man, this guy is nuts. He's out of his head. Yet the next verse says that Saul was afraid of David. 18:12. Isn't that intriguing? The very people who are out to get us are often the ones who are afraid of us. That was certainly the case with Saul and David. And David was prospering in all his ways, for the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he was prospering greatly, he dreaded him. 1 Samuel 18:14 through 15. Now, please remember, David had done nothing wrong. He had been a model of humility, dependability, and integrity. He had done right, but everything was now backfiring. God begins to pull the crutches from beneath David, one by one. It must have been a terrifying experience for the young man, especially since he had done nothing to deserve such treatment. When there was war again, David went out and fought with the Philistines and defeated them with great slaughter, so that they fled before him. 1 Samuel 19:8. Obviously, David is now an officer in Saul's army, possibly commanding a battalion or a division of men. In that role of leadership, he went out, battled the Philistines, and defeated them. Now there was an evil spirit from the Lord on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing the harp with his hand. And Saul tried to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, so that he struck the spear into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. 1 Samuel 19:9 through 10. The removal of five significant crutches. Let's understand, this is now the second time Saul has attacked David with a spear. Mark the words. David fled and escaped, because you will hear them again and again during this segment of David's life. It becomes a pattern, a means of survival. The first thing David lost was the crutch of a good position. He had been brought into the army. He had proven himself a faithful, even heroic soldier, and now it's all gone in the flash of a spear. Never again will he serve in Saul's army. The next crutch God removes in David's wife. The next crutch God removes is David's wife. We haven't talked about her yet, so let's go back a bit in the chronology of David's life. Remember, Saul had promised the man who slew Goliath that he would have his daughter as a wife, but Saul's motives were not pure. Now, Michal, Saul's daughter, or Michal. Now, Michal or Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David. When they told Saul, the thing was agreeable to him, and Saul thought, I will give her to him that she may become a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. 1 Samuel 18:20 through 21. Saul deceitfully used his daughter as a pawn, asking that David pay a dowry for her that required him to kill 100 Philistines, perhaps secretly hoping that David would be killed instead. David managed to deliver what Saul asked without being killed, which made Saul even more afraid of him and more desirous of killing him. After David fled from Saul, he went home to his wife. Then Saul sent messengers to David's house to watch him in order to put him to death in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be put to death. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went out, fled, and escaped. 1 Samuel 19:11 through 12. David is a fugitive, running to get away from Saul, and Michal deceives her father so that David can escape. What goes around comes around. Now Dad faces daughter and says, what's this all about? Why have you deceived me and let my enemy escape? I had to, she lies. He threatened to kill me if I didn't help him. 1917. In essence, David's wife deliberately walked away from him. Never again will they live in harmony. And her lie doesn't help David. It only deepens Saul's anger against him. Thus, God has removed another crutch, David's wife. Now David is running through the hills, trying to find some secure place to lean. As we might expect, he goes to Samuel, the man who had anointed him with oil as the chosen one to succeed Saul. Now David fled and escaped and came to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and stayed in Naioth. 1 Samuel 19:18. In the archaeological dig at Naioth, some time ago, the archaeology found ancient remains of what we would call condominiums, houses built back to back, side to side, top to bottom, a maze-like arrangement. No wonder Samuel said, let's go to Naioth. That's the kind of place where they can't find us. So David and Samuel went there together, but no sooner had they gotten there, then someone informed Saul that David is at Naioth in Ramah. So once again, David was on the move. He fled from Naioth and Ramah and came to Jonathan, 19:18 through 20. 19:18 through 20. In the process, he lost Samuel as a crutch to lean on. Gradually, David was losing all his support, everything he might have leaned on, his position in the king's court and in the army, his wife, and now Samuel. David's emotional stability is slowly eroding. The once calm, confident young warrior is feeling the squeeze. We see this clearly in his initial encounter with the next person he seeks out, his closest friend, Jonathan. David cries out to Jonathan, why is your father trying to kill me? What have I done wrong? What sin have I committed? Why is he doing this, Jonathan? This can't be, my friend, says Jonathan. You are not going to die. My father does nothing, great or small, without telling me about it. So why would he hide something like this from me? It just can't be. Yet David vowed again, saying, Your father knows well that I have found favor in your sight. And he has said, Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, there is hardly a step between me and death. 1 Samuel 23. What a statement. Death was dodging his steps. Ever lived like that? A hair's breadth away from death. Some war veterans could identify with that. There was a man in my former congregation who faced that kind of experience during World War II in Italy. His hair turned white virtually overnight in one of those horrendous battles. Makes you wonder if perhaps David began to turn gray young in life. The truth, of course, was that Saul hated David and wanted him dead. In a poignant exchange, David and Jonathan come to that moment of truth and what it will require. And Jonathan said to David, Go in safety, inasmuch as we have sworn to each other in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord will be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. Then he rose and departed, while Jonathan went into the city. 1 Samuel 20:42. After working out how Jonathan could signal to David if his life truly was hanging by a thin thread, the two parted company. The story told in 1 Samuel 20 is a very dramatic one. Rather than my attempting to retell it here, I suggest you set this book aside and read the account directly from the scriptures. The scenes are vividly portrayed and well worth your reading it on your own. Ultimately, Jonathan went in one direction and David went in another. What a moment that was for David. God had taken away his position, his wife and Samuel. Now he loses his closest friend, Jonathan. Then comes the final blow. David loses self respect. That's the last crutch. In fact, it is the lowest tide of a person's life. Then David arose and fled that day from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. 1 Samuel 21:10. Gath? Could it really be Gath? That was where Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, had lived. Gath was the headquarters, the Washington, D.C., the Oval Office of Philistines. And of all people, here was David at Gath, of all places, looking for the king. Was he conspicuous? Without doubt. Here was the man who had killed their champion, walking deliberately into enemy headquarters, as you would expect. David was recognized immediately. But the servants of Achish said to him, Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of this one as they danced, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? 1 Samuel 21:11. This is David of all people. What's he doing here? Well, David wasn't stupid. You didn't have to hit him over the head, but you won't believe what he did next. Read the following very carefully. Imagine the scene. And David took these words to heart and greatly feared Achish, king of Gath. So he disguised his sanity before them and acted insanely in their hands and scribbled on the doors of the gate and let his saliva run down into his beard. 1 Samuel 21:12-13. Oh man, that's David. That's our champion, foaming at the mouth, scratching on the gate, looking like a madman as the foam dribbles into his beard. David had hit rock bottom. I tell you, when every one of your crutches is removed, things begin to erode. As the erosion continues, you begin to think differently. And then you begin to replace those thoughts with strange thoughts. And then you begin to lose sight of the truth. And then you hit bottom. Again, never let it be said that scriptures lack humor. In the midst of all this tragedy, God offers us a touch of comedy. Then Achish said to his servant, behold, you see the man behaving as a madman. Why do you bring him to me? Do I lack madmen that you have brought this one to act the madman in my presence? Shall this one come into my house? 1 Samuel 21, 14 through 15. I've got enough nuts in this court already, screams Achish. Don't bring me another one. Get rid of him, is what it implies. David couldn't even find relief in the enemy's camp. Even they tossed him out. David had a position and he lost it. He had a wife and he lost her. He had a wise counselor and he lost him. He had a friend and he lost him. He had self respect and he lost it. Not unlike Job, it hit him with such back to back force, his head must have spun for hours. There might be centuries between us and David, but this man and his experience are more relevant than ever in our times. One of those is the very familiar experience of leaning on others, other people, and other things, rather than leaning on the Lord. David knew what it meant to have the crutches stripped away, and so do we. As children, we lean on our parents. In school, we lean on our teachers, our peers, and even on education itself. As we head towards some idol or goal, we lean on our hope for the future. When we reach adulthood, we lean on our job or profession, our mate, or our financial security. We may lean on an older friend who is like an adult parent to us. All these things can become crutches and can have bad effects in our lives. Three come to mind, three warnings to all who prefer crutches. First, crutches become substitutes for God. Deuteronomy 33:27 says, the eternal God is a dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Only God is to be our strength. In the final analysis, we are to lean only on his everlasting arms. Isaiah 41:10 says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I will hold you up, God says. But as long as you lean on someone else, you can't lean on me. As long as you lean on some other thing, you won't lean on me. They become substitutes for me, so that you are not being upheld by my hand. Second, crutches keep our focus horizontal. When you lean on another person or another thing, your focus is sideways, not vertical. You find yourself constantly looking to that other person or relying on that thing, that nice, secure bank account that's in the vault. Those things keep our focus horizontal. Human crutches paralyze the walk of faith. Third, crutches offer only temporary relief. I sound like an ad for headache medicine, don't I? But that's actually what we do. We turn to some remedy that will soothe us or comfort us or dull our pain. People take billions of tablets and capsules each year to find a tranquilizing experience in order to endure the storm of life. Now, I'm not against taking medicine or accepting help when it's necessary. I'm saying when we fall back on those as a regular habit rather than on the Lord, that's when the problem intensifies. God doesn't give temporary relief, He offers a permanent solution. Aside from the Bible, there are few books that I have found more helpful or that I have read more often than The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. The finest chapter, in my opinion, is titled The Blessedness of Possessing Nothing, which is another way of saying the blessedness of losing all crutches. Tozer writes, before the Lord God made man upon the earth, he first prepared for him by creating a world of useful and pleasant things for his sustenance and delight. In the Genesis account of the creation, These are called simply things. They were made for man's uses, but they were meant always to be eternal to the man and subservient to him. In the deep heart of the man was a shrine where none but God was worthy to come. Within him was God, without a thousand gifts which God had showered upon him. But sin has introduced complication and has made those very gifts of God a potential source of ruin to the soul. Our woes began when God was forced out of his central shrine and things were allowed to enter. Within the human heart, things have taken over. Men have now by nature no peace within their hearts, for God is crowned there no longer. But there in the moral dust, stubborn and aggressive usurpers fight among themselves for first place on the throne. This is not a mere metaphor, but an accurate analysis of our real spiritual trouble. There is within the human heart a tough, fibrous root of fallen life whose nature is to possess, always to possess. It covets things with deep and fierce passion. The pronouns my and mine look innocent enough in print, but their constant and universal use is significant. They express the real nature of the old Adamic man better than a thousand volumes of theology could do. They are verbal symptoms of our deep disease. The roots of our hearts have grown down into things, and we dare not pull up one rootlet, lest we die. Things have become necessary to us, a development never originally intended. God's gifts now take the place of God, and the whole course of nature is upset by the monstrous substitution. There can be no doubt that this possessive clinging to things is one of the most harmful habits in the life because it is so natural. It is rarely recognized for the evil that it is, but its outworkings are tragic. The ancient curse will not go out painlessly. The tough old miser within us will not lie down and die obedient to our command. He must be torn out of our heart like a plant from the soil. He must be extracted in agony and blood like a tooth from the jaw. He must be expelled from our soul by violence as Christ expelled the money changers from the temple. And we shall need to steel ourselves against his piteous begging and to recognize it as a springing out of self pity, one of the most reprehensible sins of the human heart. Some of you who read these pages are in the process of having every crutch removed from your life. This creates enormous pain and instability when support we had counted on is torn from us. For some, it is represented by a broken romance. The man or woman you felt was God's choice has now vanished and it hurts deeply. Some of you have witnessed or witnessing the demise of your marriage. The last possible thing on earth you thought would ever happen is happening. For some, it has been the death of a dream. Everything you hoped and planned for has gone up in smoke. Now, you have a choice. You can look around for some other something or someone to lean on, or you can lean on God and God alone. The prayer Tozer uses to close that chapter is appropriate here. Father, I want to know thee, but my coward heart fears to fears to give it up. Let me start over. Father, I want to know thee, but my coward heart fears to give up its toys. I cannot part with them without inward bleeding, and I do not try to hide from thee the terror of the party. I come trembling, but I do come. Please root from my heart all those things which I have cherished so long and which have become a very part of my living self, so that thou mayest enter and dwell there without a rival. Then shalt thou make the place of thy feet glorious. Then shall my heart have no need of the sun to shine in it. for thyself wilt be the light of it, and there shall be no night there. In Jesus' name, amen. That's what a man can say when his wife comes home and sighs, honey, I've got the doctor's report, and there's a strong chance of a malignancy. That's what a parent can experience when the word comes back. It's leukemia, or it's multiple sclerosis, or it's encephalitis, encephalitis. That's what you can feel when you get the pink slip and it says, we don't need you any longer on the job. Or when a wife or husband says, I don't want you any longer. Two final lessons for learners. One, there's nothing wrong with leaning if you lean ultimately and completely on the Lord. In fact, being human, you have to lean. You can't walk the life of faith alone. That's why you have Christ. You're built to be a learner or a leaner. You've got an inner shrine within your heart, and no one can occupy the shrine like he can occupy it. Nothing wrong with leaning if you're leaning on the Lord. Two, being stripped of all substitutes is the most painful experience on earth. There is nothing more painful than being stripped of the toys of the heart. So relieve yourselves of them before he has taken them away. Don't make an idol out of your mate or your children. Don't make an idol out of your position. Don't make an idol out of some possession. Enshrine the Lord in your heart and lean only on him. David needed to learn that all important principle. Maybe you do too. It was extremely difficult for him. You can expect the same. The end of chapter 6. Y'all have a great life and love of living Father.